another quarterfinal match about to get underway. So let's go ahead and meet our players. Our first, hailing from Taiwan, one of the best players from his region. Please welcome to the stage, Tom60229.
In his second World Championship appearance, Tom is hoping to do one better than last time.
His opponent, the final rookie remaining here. Please welcome to the stage, SamuelTsao.
SamuelTsao shocked the world in the Bahamas when he qualified for the World Championship. Does he have more surprises left for us?
Quarterfinal number 2, SamuelTsao versus Tom60229.
就是每一季
I spend a tremendous amount of time on Hearthstone, playing on ladder and other tournaments. It's a huge time commitment trying to improve my ranking.
就是我在对练的时候
When Tom and I practice together, he gives me a lot of insights into the game.
What has helped me the most are the tournaments I have played recently. I have matured a lot and gained much experience, which is why I am here now.
I've learned a lot from Tom. He has given me a lot of advice and helped make me a better player.
SamuelTsao versus Tom60229. Let's see what you got.
Hello everybody, welcome back to the Hearthstone 2017 World Championship. Second quarterfinal of the day. About to get underway between, this is sort of an age-old story, Admiral. The teacher versus the student.
Oh yeah. Tom and Sam connected after Bahamas. Tom, during the interview, said he actually didn't know who SamuelTsao was.
Yeah.
Both of them being from Taiwan, obviously makes some pretty good practice partners, if that's the case. He mentioned that he thought that SamuelTsao's aggressive play was exceptional and that he wanted to practice with him to learn more about that.
Yeah, and Tom was the one who approached SamuelTsao to practice with him, which is a pretty big, gesture when you consider it. And SamuelTsao mentioned that he felt really good about the fact that Tom was the one to reach out to him. But taking a look at the lineups, slight differences here, as we've seen throughout the entire tournament. SamuelTsao being on Aggro Druid, Tom60229 being on the Jade Druid. And Jade Druid has had, I feel like, a lot more success. Almost all of the players with Jade Druid had qualified for the quarterfinals that brought in their lineup.
Yeah, I think one of the big things that we've been seeing is that Oaken Summons is proving a lot of worth in the Jade Druid package. How much do you really need Jade Spirit if you can make up that advantage in other ways? You think about some of your matchups. Against Priest, you're trying to win via the armor count. Against the aggro decks, you're trying to win simply by stopping their push. Jade Spirit doesn't really do those things, and the Oaken Summons provides you 2 waves of defense oftentimes. The fact that the Jade Druids have come prepared with that specific package, I think, has been a big benefit to them this weekend.
Yeah, for sure. And we're going to start off with the matchup right away. It's going to be Aggro Druid versus Jade Druid to start things off. And Tom's got one key card in that opening hand that has Aggro Druids all across the world sweating. And that's Spreading Plague.
Oh, I thought it was the Arcane Tyrant.
Yeah, Arcane Tyrant 2.
That is definitely somewhat of a problem more for SamuelTsao's deck, I'd say, than it would be for some of the other Aggro Druids that we've seen. SamuelTsao's tops out with Living Mana, Cobalt Scalebane, and Corridor Creeper. Top out with Corridor Creeper.
Yeah. Only one Scalebane as well.
No Bittertide Hydras.
That's right.
And that's been a big performer, I think, versus Jade Druid throughout the weekend. It's just such a large threat that it constantly has pressure on the Jade Druid player to mount a defense, then also be able to kill it afterwards. Now, while we've seen that happen, it's quite unusual that's the case. But he also has one of the more important starts here with opening Enchanted Raven and the buff with the card draw right afterwards. That's a lot of pressure on Tom early.
That's right. But we've seen time and time again these Aggro Druids having blistering starts. But if they can't make a couple of big threats that they just keep buffing up, and they are forced to go wide on the board at some point, Spreading Plague has been a massive punish for these types of strategies throughout the entire weekend here at the World Championship. And
Tom Nolan over his turn.
Yeah.
Feels like something's up here. Like, you can tell he's already working on sequencing out these turns. In case SamuelTsao has one of those blistering starts, how does he want to react if that's the case? That's a lot of planning that goes into a hand like this when you have Spreading Plague. You have a couple of removal spells, and you have a Jade Behemoth. You need to figure out at what points do those inflections really hit, and you have to take advantage of them. That time window is going to close because SamuelTsao has as much pressure as well. So Tom, he's got to get going about as quickly as possible here.
Yeah, but does have Jade Blossom. That's going to be a little bit of ramp, but we're still a few turns away from Spreading Plague. And SamuelTsao actually picks up Southsea Captain. So unless Patches is the very next draw, he's going to have a pretty powerful turn.
And this is one of the panouts I think that actually really benefits Tom, and one of the reasons why I think SamuelTsao might not find the easiest win in this matchup is that even though he's got this much pressure, his top end right now is Living Mana. So into a card like Spreading Plague, that card is quite ineffective. Tom having Swipe and having Wrath looks like he is going to get through this early push, and it's a matter of how Sam can attack afterwards. So this is quite a concerning situation if you're SamuelTsao.
Also, sort of the order of things, Galaka Crawler has been a Tekken Aggro Druid because players were expecting a lot of aggressive mirrors. Tempo Rogue was a deck that almost everybody brought to the tournament, and almost everybody expected everybody else to bring to the tournament. That, coupled with Aggro Druid being a popular choice, made Galaka Crawler a good inclusion for Aggro Druid. Also coupled with the fact that, you know, it's got the B synergy with Mark of Yasharaj, that it's just an early curve minion that synergizes a lot with the deck. But if you play your Pirates before you get the Galaka Crawler and your opponent's not playing any Pirates in their deck, you can get into these awkward situations where you can't play your Galaka Crawler because your Pirates are on your board.
Yeah. And this is one of the reasons that you see SamuelTsao trade with the Enchanted Raven rather than that Patches instead. Swipe would have just been an abysmal turn for him if he chose to trade with Patches.
Yeah.
Keep a 2-1 around and then the 4-4 around. Those little things matter a lot, and he's also expecting Oaken summons quite often. Now Tom drew that fresh off the top, but now suddenly Savage Roar is prepared to fight through this and continue pushing that little bit of damage.
Yeah, and Savage Roar, we've talked about it a couple times over the past couple matchups that we've cast, but getting the value early with Savage Roar can oftentimes be a good boon for the Aggro Druid player because they may not have an opportunity to get good value out of it later on.
Yeah.
Maybe it can help you get over Spreading Plague, but a lot of times Spreading Plague comes after Living Mana and you don't have an opportunity to even cast it because you don't have the mana for it.
Right.
The turn post Living Mana. So he didn't really have any other options here. But even if he did, Savage Roar would be an enticing option.
And excuse my trade of the 4-3. He obviously will be using his health total in that spot.
Yeah.
His life total is largely irrelevant for the large portion of this game. By the time Tom starts delivering damage, it's likely he's locked at the game at that spot anyway. But this turn from Tom is really going to be an important one here. It really boils down to how much he removes from board, and then if SamuelTsao has a big follow-up. The fact that he's missing again, Bittertide Hydra, is such an important measure. Almost any way you slice this, Tom lands a good Spreading Plague.
Now, I want to talk a minute about SamuelTsao's next turn. He's got double Living Mana in hand, but that will be going right into turn 6 for Tom. He saw a card kept on the mulligan. That card has not been played yet.
What choices?
Do you ever just not Living Mana?
Well, the problem then is that what happens for Tom's range that SamuelTsao loses to in that spot, and those are really big questions. Maybe SamuelTsao looks at it and goes, if his only defense is Spreading Plague, maybe I can get him to absorb just a little bit, and then Living Mana afterwards to push.
Yeah.
So that is likely something that he's going to think about, and is very dependent on his draw. But if he doesn't play Living Mana, then the Jade Behemoths can start punishing Sam as well.
So that's sort of the point of, you know, sometimes you just have to take the risk and hope they don't have it when you're playing aggressive decks, and that's a good lesson. When you are, you know, even online playing aggressive decks, sometimes the right play to make is just to make your strongest play each turn and force your opponent to have the answers.
Now, Cobalt Scalebane,
that changes things.
That will change Sam's play. That is the minion in his deck that's designed to fight against Spreading Plague in an efficient manner, and you can see his posture change right when he draws that card. Like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have to take a huge risk, and now I don't.
Yeah, it's also a card that's been good for inclusions against Highlander Priest because it doesn't get killed by Dragonfire Potion because of that Dragon Tag. And
I think this is an easy trade here for SamuelTsao. Not necessarily easy. I think it is quite a painful trade to have to make, but you would much rather keep as much health in your Scalebane as possible than set yourself up. And that is quite a poor result, I think, overall, because now Tom has the option for swiping and clearing off the Scalebane, but I don't really know if he has the life to afford that right now. Or maybe he does. That was a pretty quick decision from Tom.
Well, he might have a good read on what those cards are in the far left.
And that could be part of the case, too. You know, what would SamuelTsao have not played by this point? That could still be there. Yeah, thinking like Mark of the Lotus, maybe Power of the Wild. There's no opportunities to use those two particular cards. SamuelTsao, once again, faced with the decision how to load up. At this stage, Jade Behemoth, Malfurion, those start becoming quite scary cards. But since he's stuck to his guns on the Cobalt Scalebane, he might just follow up with the captain here as well. The thing that I'm fearing is he still doesn't really have a strong way to figure out whether or not Tom has Spreading Plague or not. The Cobalt Scalebane was his decided play. You know,
yeah,
that's when he built his deck. He decided to do that on turn 5.
If he just plays South Sea Captain, Tom wouldn't pull the trigger on Spreading Plague in almost any scenario. So it's not a check for it.
Right.
And he doesn't have a way to sequence that Glock Crawler. And
that's exactly what he's thinking here.
Comes to the conclusion that he just got to hope he doesn't have it. He can't make a weak play again.
Oh, wow.
Force Tom to do it.
Second swipe as well. Yeah. And that's a big deal if SamuelTsao doesn't draw a buff from this spot. That means his entire board game here.
Yeah, because most of the time SamuelTsao is going to attack in with these living mana tokens and put him at 1 health and just make it easy.
It's like this animation's just like taunting him every single time too. It's like 1 by 1. That's a pretty darn good draw though. Now the fact that SamuelTsao has the second living mana and Power of the Wild to go with it, you know, suddenly that changes a lot of this game dynamic as well. It's not as easy as Tom just sitting behind the board and setting this up. The thing about it is it's hard for Sam to trade off the board in a really efficient manner. So if this goes at a stalemate, what ends up happening is Tom just chips away at Sam's total until he gets to a dangerous spot.
Yeah, Sam needs multiple turns to be able to set up living mana into a buff.
Yeah.
Like Power of the Wild, because next turn he's not doing anything.
That's going to give Tom a lot of time to put something together.
Yeah.
Now he is only at 10, so you know that is quite a dangerous life total. So if I'm in Tom's spot here, it looks to me like you trade off a portion of the board and maybe go with Jade Behemoth to start accelerating that clock on SamuelTsao. His hand isn't super secure, so it makes a lot of sense to maybe sacrifice these Scarabs and start pressuring Sam back.
Yeah, that's the big decision point for Tom. This looks like the juiciest swipe of his life, but is it really? Is it better to actually build up a minion, start that Jade counter going, get an expensive card like Jade Behemoth out of your hand?
Is it even better to start
the board,
chipping away his life total now and just force Sam to play Power of the Wild maybe, or Mark the Lotus on a board that's already been partially weakened?
That's kind of a risk, because at this point he's had 2 draws since the last time he would have played a buff.
I like this play from Tom, yeah. Because the thing about it is now if he uses Power of the Wild, he's still stunting SamuelTsao's development because all of his mana is tied up in those living mana tokens. So if Sam uses Power of the Wild here and starts running back over these Scarabs, then Tom gets to use Swipe as a tempo play to really deliver that clock back to SamuelTsao. I think this is a brilliant move from Tom.
I think a lot of players swipe in that scenario.
I would have untapped, swiped, and said go in about 2.5 seconds. I probably would have lost.
Because we look at the scenario, what it would have been like if he did swipe, he would have had no development besides maybe a Jade Idol. SamuelTsao would have played a fresh living mana with more tokens, and then potentially followed that up with Power of the Wild, and the board wouldn't have been as strong as it was now, and Tom would be down a swipe, so he wouldn't have that to clean up the board afterwards.
And the thing about it is, from Sam's perspective, it really looks like Tom doesn't have that second swipe. That is a check for swipe in a lot of scenarios, and so the fact that Tom has made this brilliant move, it means that Sam is going to keep trading into these tokens, weakening up the board a little bit further, and give Tom that opening to press back.
So Tom might be doing the math here of swipe a minion versus swipe the face.
Yeah.
If he swipes face, he pushes 12 damage. If he goes all face with that, he develops Arcane Tyrant.
Boy.
Yeah.
Well, Tom's all in, and I think this is a very winning scenario for him. There is no way really for SamuelTsao to push back through this. And that's 10 represented on board with nothing that affects the board state in Sam's hand.
That's basically a checkmate scenario.
Or in his deck. Except for that. That is the only card that can provide any defensive measure.
But even then, any type of armor gain or damage draw at that stage would be able to allow him to push through, because SamuelTsao would have to Druid the Swarm for taunt, And he would also have to hero power. They're bringing up to 11 with five health worth of taunts on the board. Tom just straight up has 12. So he would need an armor upgrade plus a hero power that would allow him to push through with the Jasper Spellstone.
Tom's got a lot of draws in the game.
Ultimate Infestation would allow him to push through because he'll be on 10 mana next turn. So we're looking at Branching Paths, we're looking at Oaken Summons, we're looking at second Lesser Jasper Spellstone, we're looking at Ultimate Infestation. All these cards just end the game next turn.
There's
And
also a
even
lot of
after
cards that like effectively end the game as well, like giant defensive measures.
Yeah.
In the same vein, pretty much do the job. You know, Oaken Summons upgrades the Spellstone to 4. There's so much that SamuelTsao has to have go right at the stage. But that is quite an awkward draw.
Yeah, now if he draws into Oaken Summons, it's not enough. Branching Paths would still be enough.
No, Oaken Summons would still be enough.
He would Lesser Jasper Spellstone attack
And
it.
use
Yeah,
the
you're
one
right.
one, yeah.
Because of the, I believe
He
it was
doesn't get it. In fact, he
Wow.
doesn't really draw anything of much value here. And now Tom's got to worry about offensive pressure from SamuelTsao. And that's what I wanted to talk about before Tom had cast that Nourish, is what happens if he fails the draw?
You mean, would it better be have just played Jade Behemoth and played it safe that turn?
I'm not sure. I don't really know. I mean, he does get to break through here, so if he has enough to fend off against, say, Savage Roar and Mark of the Lotus here, the Ultimate Infestation will end the game, but Tom has to now do a bunch of math on where does he lose?
He's got to clear off these tokens because of the threat of Savage Roar. He can no longer go with that aggressive game plan. SamuelTsao would have plenty of mana in order to do that.
I think that's finally locked it up. SamuelTsao has no offensive pressure left.
Yeah, even a Savage Roar draw would have not allowed him to push through, and that means Tom takes game number 1 in this quarterfinal. Again, Jade Druid having a lot of success here at the World Championship.
It's, again, the Oaken Summons. Tom drew it right on turn 4 after an aggressive mulligan, and that card was a major impact to him winning that game. I do believe that before Tom Nourished, he had thought about that turn and thought, I have enough to clear off the board, but just wanted to take his time and figure out the best way to fight back against it. So
yeah,
I believe Tom had that calculated, and tight play from him so far.
Yeah, that's right. SamuelTsao on the back foot now. But also another thing we want to highlight to you guys is there's actually a line building up to have stuff signed by me and Admirable. But for now, the lesser casters of Frodan and Kibler are standing in for us. So thanks everybody. We'll be over there in a few moments once this match is done. And thanks Kibler and Dan for filling in for us. But for now, we'll see if SamuelTsao can bring it back in the next game right after this.
原本我只是单纯很喜欢魔兽跟卡牌游戏而已，当初完全没有想过自己会成为炉石的职业选手。直到在 ONOG 击败 Colento 后，才了解我其实很强。然后这一路上，我拿到了台湾第一，甚至是亚太第一。不过这些头衔跟讲座都没什么实际的感觉，毕竟比赛不是你期望怎样就会怎样的。唯一能做好的，只有调试好每一次上场的心态。这次我几乎把所有的心力放在这次比赛，现在是我状态最好的一刻。我一直不断的进步，进步，再进步。我一定会拿下这次的世界冠军。
当初遥不可及的梦想，现在就在眼前。
从前只是个炉石玩家，到代表国家出征的选手。我经过无数的挫折，不断的调整、修正，再出发，才有今天的我。我是 SamuelTsao， 准备好迎接这次的胜利。或许有一天，你也能站上世界舞台。
Well met.
大家好，我是 SamuelTsao。
I'm SamuelTsao. I'm coming from Chinese Taipei. When I'm not studying, I'll play Hearthstone all day long. But on school days, studying is my first priority. My favorite food is a bowl of traditional Taiwanese beef noodles. I'm a Christian, so I always pray before tournaments. It brings me peace.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Hearthstone World Championship. We're about to jump into game number 2 of SamuelTsao versus Tom60229. 60,229 enemies vanquished. Is SamuelTsao the next one?
He's got to change the whole name after that.
If only. But now we're going to get into another mirror, well, sort of a mirror, class mirror, with Priest versus Priest.
Well, you say class mirror, but it's pretty much a mirror match. There's very little difference between these two lists. One of the major ones to look at is that Tom has come a little extra prepared for this particular matchup. Warlock has been a big ban of most players in the tournament. In fact, of the top 8 players remaining, I believe there's only been 2 non-Warlock bans. And that trend stays true to this match. Tom has a copy of Lyra the Sun Shard and Gadgets and Auctioneer in his deck, where SamuelTsao only has a copy of Lyra. And if you remember back to the Summer Championships, that was really the first appearance of Gadgets and Auctioneer in the tournament Highlander Priest lists. That extra card draw that you get can really fuel you to a Raza Anduin draw very quickly. However, Tom already has Raza and Anduin, so a very different battle that SamuelTsao is going to have to fight this game.
Yeah, and the difference being, Gadget and Auctioneer is there for matchups where you want to just draw through your deck as quickly as possible. When your opponent has a finite amount of health, where there's no real X factor, you're just trying to kill them from 30 as quickly as possible. Lyra's there when you're playing those matchups where you need a little bit of extra oomph. You need a couple cards that aren't in your deck. And we're talking about those matchups where your opponents may be able to gain some additional health, let's say Jade Druid or Big Mage. Lyra also has the added benefit of sometimes just catching your opponent off guard and giving you that extra ability in matchups that you may not have been favored in from the get-go. It's also just a body that comes out earlier.
Yeah.
And we've seen it sort of split up until the World Championship, where some players brought just Gadgets and Auctioneer, and some players brought just Lyra, depending on their feel and what matchups they thought they were going to run into the most.
Yeah.
So Tom basically has just a big advantage because he's got both of those.
Well, the one thing that is kind of curious to me is Tom's cut for the Gadgets and Auctioneer or the Lyra, depending on how you look at it. And it's that he cut Novice Engineer. And Novice Engineer is actually one of the, I'd say, better cards in this deck to end up having, just because of its card draw potential is so important early on. You want to be spending the mana early to draw cards in these styles of matchups, not necessarily later. So that is quite an interesting choice that Tom made, and I'd be curious to know exactly why that choice was made. You exchange a 2-cost draw for a 6+ cost draw. I don't know about that, Teach.
Well, it's multiple draws, theoretically. Most of the time it is. So just playing a little bit greedier for that late game. But I'm liking the way Tom's hand looks right now. I mean, anytime you have Raza and Shadowy Brand in your hand, especially in the mirror, you're feeling pretty good.
Yeah, especially if you have ways to fight off a little bit of early pressure. That does matter sometimes as a matchup where you just get minions on board and start chipping away life total. Sometimes it can boil down to a race of that damage. You're not always putting together this giant amount of combo damage and killing your opponent for 30. Sometimes you both end up throwing your resources into the fray, trying to fight for that board position, and it ends up being just 2 damage after 2 damage over and over again. Sometimes you kill them, 15, 18 life or whatever. Wow, oh my gosh. Tom is just, this is one of the best draws imaginable for this matchup, I think.
This is the Highlander Priest starting kit.
SamuelTsao is facing that awkward pressure right now where he doesn't have an effective way to really fight back against his board. Lyra's going to get almost no value in this circumstance.
He can play Circle of Healing to just get 1 card off Lyra and force some attention to it, but it would get eaten up pretty easily by just the hero power and the Arcanine Soul Priest hit. And so he's just going to go ahead, heal his face, and pass. And
he's only missing Mind Blast at this point. Everything's there.
Maybe Holy Smite to complete the
Radiant Elemental
package.
And you notice that SamuelTsao didn't play the Acolyte of Pain. He's trying to fend off against Potion of Madness being a big liability to him, but I'm not sure he's actually at liberty of making those styles of plays this game. It's just under so much pressure here. So maybe he gets the benefit of knowing that he has his Dragonfire Potion on this turn, and follows up with Acolyte and like Spirit Lash in a certain way. But I think I would have liked to see him play that Acolyte of Pain and just try to get a draw. Maybe even just soak up a hit from the Arcanine Soul Priest in that spot.
Yeah.
This really is a race to assemble the Raza Anduin combo in a lot of situations, even if you are fighting for more in the meantime.
Yeah, it's true, and you do want to protect your life total, but maybe he's pretty confident that he'll get multiple draws later. Say he draws Spirit Lash, say he draws Wild Pyromancer. Those are cards where you can immediately get value out of Acolyte of Pain without having to worry about Potion of Madness too much. So.
Yeah, it's a true story.
But right now, I mean, Tom's probably going to jam Kazaka's next turn, fish for a good 1-mana potion that has damage attached to it.
Well, I think that could depend here as well. I mean, the Dragonfire Go does give Tom the option of looking for, say, like a big Resurrect potion in this spot. Maybe he favors the 5. It's just with his hand being this good, I do believe he'll go for 1.
Yeah. I mean, that
maybe there's even merit to like Auctioneer Coin Power Word Shield at this stage.
Yeah, but you know, that 1-mana potion, if you get 3 damage, it effectively becomes 10 damage later on in the game with the Velen.
This is a big question, though. I mean, how would SamuelTsao fight off a 4/6 Gadgetzan Auctioneer in this spot?
He would have to Psychic Scream, basically, or just use a silence, a natural silence. And I think that's what's going through Tom's mind, but...
Coin's so valuable.
Yeah, Coin is very valuable. It's 4 damage later on with Velen, and it allows you to open up that mana slot for the 1-mana potion.
I don't think there's any way you slice it. That potion is pretty darn weak for Tom at the end of the day.
Summon a friendly minion and add a random demon to your hand. Now, there's a lot of cheap demons.
Fuel for the fire.
That's right. Tom just sort of picking the only options that really have an effect in this matchup. His other options were freeze a minion.
2 damage to the board.
Yeah. I don't even know what you do in this scenario.
Well,
I mean,
if I'm in Sam's seat, I'm feeling quite desperate. So yeah. I do like the Spirit Lash in this instance, and I think there is some consideration just Holy Smiting your own Acolyte of Pain and seeing if you can pick up the right draws in the spot. He's just got a power cycle.
Looking for Raza, looking for card draw, looking for Kazakus. That's about it. I guess Curious Glimmerroot could, find one of those pieces.
Well, Tom he's really wanting to play this Auctioneer.
I got the best deals anywhere.
And rightfully so. I mean, this is a lot of gas that he's going to get.
I mean, he's at risk of overdrawing with the loot hoarder, but at this point, he doesn't even care.
And
he's got everything he needs already, basically, except for maybe the Mind Blast.
And that's the thing, when you risk the overdraw here and your opponent sees that, you're just going, oh no. I guess they have it. Like, why else would Tom risk this unless it's just a blunder?
At that point, SamuelTsao probably isn't even worried about that. He's worried about his own game plan, so he's probably just going to even push to Madness this loot hoarder to take the draw for himself.
I think he'd rather have the draw than go for an overdraw here.
Is there ever a merit to going for Lyra plus Radiant Elemental and then push to Madness and try and keep that chain of spells going?
I mean, he's got Mind Blast, he's got Intuit. If he finds Raza, the Radiant Elemental and Mind Blast could be key for him in this game. And staring down the Auctioneer with Tom having 9 cards in hand, going 10 cards, maybe there is some merit to not Psychic Screaming, but that is terrifying. It's not a very good Psychic Screaming. You just put a Kazakus back in Tom's deck.
The light has betrayed me.
Sam knows this is the beginning of the end for him because he does not have his own Anduin active. He doesn't have Raza active.
This is as bad as it gets, I think.
This is quite bad. For him to even have a hope, this would have to be almost exactly Raza, or the next draw would have to be almost exactly Raza. Now,
what if he Glimmer Roots Raza? That looks like the direction to go right now.
In that case, I think if that's your hope, you want to Shadow Reaper into it first, so that way you stick a board afterwards.
Ah.
Getting it out of the way and then hoping that either your next draw is Raza or Curious Glimmer Root gets Raza.
Well, hold on. Tom is he's about to put on a show here. Looks like 18 to me.
18 max.
Oh my.
Yep.
That is horrid news if you're SamuelTsao.
Yep.
Is Tom playing Pit Lord? No, that can't be right.
He played Pit Lord.
Believe that.
He does not need armor anymore. There's no Raza on board. You might as well just make a 5/6. But we can now say that Pit Lord was played in the quarterfinals of the World Championship. In Priest, mind you. And yeah, it looks like it's just too late for SamuelTsao, unless he picks up healing from Lyra. That's the only way he can survive, even just past this turn. And then he has to worry about the board and clear that, but he's got to go for Lyra plus Radiant Elemental and hope for a miracle.
Chain of Smites.
A chain of Smites, and then a chain of Binding Heals afterwards.
No, just 15 Smites in a row.
Okay. Or a mixture of the two.
It's only like trillions to one, probably.
If that. All right, looking for a Holy Smite. Didn't get it. Looking for a Holy Smite. Oh, this could... Oh, almost. Not going to be enough.
That's it.
Tom has plenty of damage.
So much.
Not all who want are
Tom's going to take a pretty quick 2-0 lead here over SamTsao. And that hand was just gas. Sometimes you got the goods and you're just not beating it.
Raza Priest, time and time again, players considered to be one of the strongest decks in the game, but when they get pitted up against each other, sometimes the stars align for one player and they don't for the other. SamuelTsao is now one game away from elimination.
I feel like Tom has gotten wins on two very important decks to get win on. I think Jade Druid can struggle versus SamTsao's lineup. I think the Highlander Priest is a bit more greedy against the aggressive lineup from Sam. Tempo Rogue is what's left.
And Tom has shown some pretty impressive play on Tempo Rogue, so we're going to see if he can close it out and complete the sweep in game number 3 right after this.
Don't stray too far away from the fire. There's more tales to tell at the World Championship.
So, and how does a card like get designed or gets into Hearthstone? Because we all know the Warcraft background, and the lore has been in it. But does it first? Is the design coming first, or is the card itself like in Hearthstone the first part?
We call those two directions top down and bottom up. So sometimes we have a great design for a card, right? Like Reno Jackson, I think, is a good example, right? He's a card that we knew we wanted to encourage people to do decks that were one of each card type, right? So that was the design was first, and it eventually ended up on Reno Jackson. And sometimes we have a fantasy that we're chasing. Like Jiraxis is a great example of that, right? We were doing a play test. And when we were doing this play test, this is a long time ago, we had Horde and Alliance versions of every class. Okay. So I think for Warlock, it was Cho'Gall and Wilfred Fizzlebang were the two heroes. And so we brought a guy in from the World of Warcraft team to test the Hearthstone and see what he thought about the game. And he chose Wilfred Fizzlebang. And he said, oh, I hope there's a Jiraxis card in this deck. Because famously, Wilfred Fizzlebang in the World of Warcraft raid tries to summon a Doomguard, ends up summoning Jiraxis instead. Jiraxis kills him and takes over as the new boss. And he's like, all right, well, you got to face me now. And so there wasn't a Jiraxis card. Shoot, of course everyone's going to say that. We must have a Jiraxis card. And I went back to my desk and I designed Jiraxis. That's a top-down design where we start with the fantasy and then come up with mechanics that fit the fantasy. We do a lot of both, actually. We do a significant amount of designs that are based on the theme of the expansion. So a good example is the Grand Tournament. We wanted some, what is a refreshment vendor, right? Like that's going to be at a tournament. What would he do at a tournament? He might give people funnel cakes and heal them or something, right? And then we also wanted designs that were reminiscent of the hero power fantasy of making hero powers matter in that set, and those are more bottom-up designs.
World Championship. You can see on your screen now some of the fun that's been happening all across the tavern. And this is what these players are fighting for. The chance to become a world champion and put cards on their heads.
There's a lot happening around the tavern. There's small little tournaments that are happening alongside these side games. You can win prizes with exclusive HCT gear. And I believe that does conclude today as well. But really fun environment here at the World Championship.
Definitely. But all that fun going on, but probably stressful for these guys on stage. They might be having a little bit of fun, but their eyes are set on the prize. Tom currently has a 2-0 lead against SamuelTsao. The winner of this match moves on to the semifinals. And the loser goes home disappointed.
Now, mind you,
top 8 finish.
DocPone was just up 2-0. And you heard Kibler say it. They walked over to the analyst desk. They thought he had it locked up. And things turned around. Jason Joe won that series 3-2. Don't count SamuelTsao out yet, because aggressive decks can put together some pretty crazy starts, and things can change awfully quick.
And what deck was it that DocPone got reverse swept with? It was Tempo Rogue. Tom60229, that's his last remaining deck to find a win with if he wants a spot there. SamuelTsao's first challenge is going to be with the Aggro Druid. At his opening start, reasonable outside the Savage Roar. Does need some minions to couple with those buffs.
I mean, that's what the whole deck is, though. It's buffs and minions.
Yeah, this one's a little bit different. Unlike Druid that we talked about earlier, where having a few minions that you continuously buff, go tall on the board, is not really as good of a strategy against Tempo Rogue because they have good single target removal with Vile Spine Slayer, backstab SI, things like that. It's about going wide on the board and making too many threats for the Tempo Rogue to be able to deal with.
I'm going to go with the Swashbuckler right away and try to soften up SamuelTsau's board. It's quite wise, I think, to be doing that for the most part. And this is becoming an interesting situation for SamuelTsao, where having this many buffs, drawing the Fireflies are some of the better draws in the deck. It allows him to use the first one fairly liberally if he'd like. And the second one, the timing of that pressure can be a lot for Tom to handle all at once. Tempo Rogue does a decent job at fighting for board, but not against a lot of things all at once. Most of its time, it wants to backstab an SI7 agent, or play Sergeant Chain Gang, soften up the board for combat on the backside, even just coin Vile Spine Slayer. It's when there's a lot of threats presented all at once that it really struggles. And so that's really SamuelTsao's job right now, how to partition these resources to maximize his edge versus Tom's next turn or two.
Yeah, and it's interesting because just a Firefly plus a hero power is actually a play that I would consider, despite having this much stuff in my hand. Now, he does have buffs on the backside, but like you mentioned, maybe it's better to try and save these things and then buff them up in one turn. But the risk of that is that if Tom has a board to follow it up, then all of a sudden he falls behind. He has to, sort of make a tough read that Tom doesn't have reload to make that play. So he actually just does go with the Firefly, but Tom's got a way to clear up almost the whole board here. Decides to go with just the Power of the Wild for the Panther token.
So this is where the first big turn, I think, SamuelTsao comes in. That draw changes a lot of that dynamic. That is quite a powerful draw right now. I'm going to be curious to see if Sam goes with 2 minions here, or if he wants to play the 1-5 in taunt mode, and then just buff up the board from there, looking to use the second buff immediately afterwards. Because if you look at his next 2 or 3 turns, it would be +1/+1 the entire board, so 2/6 taunt, 2/2/3s. Next turn he buffs those again, and the next turn he Savage Roars. So Tom would have to have quite a bit to fight that off.
Yeah. SamuelTsao assuming the thinking position. There it is.
Hands off the keyboard. You can't play fast then. And that's been a big talking point, I think, for SamuelTsao. I have been quite a fan of his mechanical play in a lot of spots. He's been very patient, and you can see where his thinking is on these turns. Even when things seem quite obvious, he wants to take his time and dig very deep to see if he can find an alternative.
Yeah, he does take his time and play quite slowly with these faster decks. And we think back to Winter, where SamuelTsao qualified. Back then it was best of 7. And he had some, 3-4 hour long best of 7 matches when it was a control meta, but I saw your face kind of light up with that trade.
I don't like that trade really one bit at all. I think that if SamuelTsao makes that trade there, what is the main thing he's playing around? Like a Southsea Deckhand SI7 agent, or Southsea Deckhand plus a dagger up? I think in that position he gets some extra damage, and also it ends up in a very similar situation. The fact that he's traded that off there, I'm curious what it really means in the long term. Maybe he's done the math on how the next 3 or 4 turns pan out, and that 2 damage just isn't relevant.
Now he's kind of in on that boat of buff up his stuff and then hope Savage Roar gets there, but by trading off a minion, that makes it weaker. And instead of forcing Tom to have it, he now put himself in a position where he played safe and potentially a little bit too safe. And now I'm curious, does he buff up his minions, or does he make a 3/2 token with Savage Roar being in hand?
This really is the interesting play to me. I think there is some argument for just Savage Roar right now.
Okay.
For control of his thought process to protect this 2/6 as long as possible. If he plays the Power of the Wild right away, there's just never a world where Tom plays Sarnite Chain Gang. And that's actually, I think, one of the better minions that SamuelTsao can see played against him right now. That just plays directly into his Power of the Wild in that case.
That's exactly what he does. A great spot by SamuelTsao. All right, now
I'm playing the Laka.
That's tough.
I mean, if you play it now, it is a 3/4. You're taking the first 4 turns of the game is really, I think, where you could justify fighting for board with Aggro Druid, and he's done that. He's won. So I think you add this 3/4 pressure to it, and put Tom on a clock, and say, if you got it, you got me.
Or you sacrifice this 1/2 in order to play Power of the Wild, kill over his 2 minions, and then get Corridor Creeper online.
Bold call, Teach.
Or, no, there's no other or.
Those are really the two things for him to think about in this spot. And there's no reason not to take his time at this point. He needs to be picture perfect to make this a real comeback.
Corridor Creeper, it's going to get cheaper as the game goes on. And holds onto the Galaka.
Tom's just really not have a way to fight back against this.
Yeah, not a great draw with Shadow Step. There's nothing that he can really do.
And he's getting punished for having Cobalt Scalebane in his deck. You know, Tom has trimmed a lot of the defensive measures out of his deck. There are no copies of Tar Creeper. There's 1 copy of Elven Minstrel, and there's 2 copies of Cobalt Scalebane.
And another Power of the Wild drawn.
Wow.
Corridor Creeper plus Power of the Wild. He could push 11.
This is really
this turn. Put Tom at 6.
This is really the turn where he's got to think about how his game plan looks versus Vile Spine Slayer. And with another Power of the Wild, it looks quite strong. Cobalt Scalebane doesn't punch through his taunt minion.
Yeah.
And he's pushing 11 damage this turn. I mean, that sets Tom up for lethal. So even through a Vile Spine Slayer this turn, SamuelTsao looks like that he's got the pressure to end this.
Yeah. And that's got to be what he's thinking about here, making sure he does the math and understanding that this is going to be the best chance for him to win. Goes in, puts Tom down to just 6 health. Even Vile Spine Slayer doesn't save him. Is there a world where he needs to find something from Swashbuckler?
What could he even find? I can't think of it. I do believe that's where he pretty much has to go with this.
Branching paths.
It's not there.
Swipe's not enough.
I can almost see the numbers going on in Tom's head.
Well, let's go again. Fate spinner.
It's a 5-3. Can't backstab it.
No, can't backstab
the board.
That would be a pretty sick play.
If it dealt 6 damage to
If it dealt 6 damage to everything, but Tom concedes. SamuelTsao puts himself on the board with a win with Aggro Druid. And is this going to be a repeat of Quarterfinal 1?
Well, SamuelTsao does have a little bit of tech in his lineup to fight off against this style of matchup. He does have Highlander Priest with Galaka Crawler in it. And that reverse sweep has begun. And every single time that inches closer, Tom's going to be more and more nervous about it.
This one could be getting close, but SamuelTsao still has a big hill to climb. Will he be able to reverse sweep this Tempo Rogue? We'll find out after this.
Take 5 with Team 5.
Who would win a dance contest? Who's got the moves?
I feel like Garrosh maybe has some secret like pop and locking kind of stuff going on.
I cannot do that.
And he'd immediately get the space, you know, like dance floor clears out, gives him his shot, you know, and we just see what he can drop.
Sorry that happened.
I don't want to admit to having thought about this one before.
It's a tie so far in my mind.
The surprise hit is going to be Anduin.
I must consider.
Just because you expect him to be like the most awkward guy at a party, but I feel like he's been like really practicing in the back room somewhere all this time, and he'll just break it out, and everybody would be wondering where it came from.
Not quite what was planned.
I want to say Anduin, but I think that's too easy. I think that maybe someone like Malfurion.
A natural mistake.
Like he looks like he does Zumba or something. You know, he might have some moves that we don't know about.
My thanks to you.
I think Orc Warriors have that MC Hammer thing going down in World of Warcraft, so maybe Garrosh?
My thanks
The one that comes to mind to me first is Gul'dan. I feel like, I think about somebody who's kind of been around for a while, sort of seen it all. I could see him sort of cutting a rug and being pretty effective.
That was a mistake.
I think it's Medivh. Medivh, he threw his own 70s party. He's clearly got dance fever.
So kind of you to join me.
Medivh? Because he's got his own set of backup dancers.
Medivh's the alternate mage hero, but you saw in Karazhan he had some of those disco moves going on. So he's already displayed that he is a dancer and he has a little bit of practice there.
I always win.
I mean, it's the World Championship. It has to be one of the best field of players. Every year it's gotten better, and this has to be the best by far.
It's the strongest ever.
Yeah, I mean, it's scary.
It'll be a great show, I think.
Yeah, wish it was easier.
Welcome back, everybody. You're looking at Frozen and Scintilla as they approach the stage, getting ready for the third quarterfinal matchup. Frozen said earlier he thinks he has a 10% odds to win that one, so that's going to be coming up next. But we still have some business left here with Tom versus SamuelTsao. Tom still has a 2-1 lead, but it's with Tempo Rogue as his final deck remaining, and we've seen this deck show weaknesses earlier today.
It certainly has. And SamuelTsao practicing with Tom for this event, it's not really much of a surprise that he has an identical list to what Tom has. But there is one distinct difference that sets out in this matchup. Number one is who has the coin. Coin offers you a lot of tempo mechanisms that you do not have without it. And then number two is what are the cards that really impact the matchup? A lot of times you think to it and you go, well, Keleseth, obviously a big one. Shadow Stepping Keleseth, that can be game ending. But when it comes down to it, it's the South Sea Captains, it's the SI7 agents, it's the Vilespine Slayers. Those are the cards that really make the biggest impact in the match.
Yeah, we saw in, I believe it was Ant versus Stanudachi, where Ant was able to get Keleseth coin, or Keleseth, Shadow Step Keleseth. With Shadow Step Keleseth. 3 Keleseths, if you've been counting, and he still fell to Stanudachi, who just tempoed him out with those exact cards that you mentioned.
Yeah.
So,
and you heard Ant mention even this morning when he was speaking with Dan Kibler, he feels like that he didn't play that matchup entirely optimally. He made a misplay with his coin, and how different things would have been had he been more patient. Corridor Creeper is another one of those tempo plays that really impacts things. But SamuelTsao did pick up quite an interesting card from the Swashbuckler with Sonya. I've known a lot of players to include this, and I personally like Sonya in the main deck myself, but the fact that it's come off of Swashbuckler, that is something that Tom cannot really be prepared for.
yeah, it's very true. There's a couple players in this very tournament who include that. Muzzy notably has a Sonya in his Tempo Rogue. And so that's just a little bit of extra benefit. But you mentioned the coin, and players are putting counterfeit coin in their list naturally. Notably, a player named Rage hit rank 1 on the Americas ladder just about a week ago with a list that had a counterfeit coin. So if you have the coin, you're automatically at a favorite in this matchup.
SamuelTsao is determined that he will at least not be trading the Swashbuckler here. Swashbuckler, I think, the more beneficial of the two when it comes to items like Shadow Step, the Sonya he's gotten. And I like the push of the damage here. I think a lot of players would take this trade straight up, but Tom doesn't have a way to take advantage of it. Get your free point of damage and set the initiative on Tom to trade. Every little point here counts.
Yeah. And Tom taking it slow, that coin is incredibly valuable, so he wants to make sure that whenever he uses it, it's for the best of reasons. Next turn has the possibility of playing Elemental Coin Edwin, and then the following turn he could coin Vilespine Slayer, so 2 great opportunities.
I'm now officially worried for SamuelTsao because he doesn't have a way to actually take advantage of this Sonya. I think he may be forced into playing it here and really trying to operate on a curve. Saronite Chain Gang is his only turn 4 play. He has no other tempo plays lined up, and he's got Cobalt Scalebane, a card that just does not operate that well in this matchup. He has to try to get something going, and Tom is going to punish this very hard.
And with Corridor Creeper in hand, another Cobalt Scalebane picked up.
This is, I think, probably one of the worst panouts that SamuelTsao could have seen. Both Scalebanes, the Lich King opening hand, no synergy with Shadow Step, and a Bone Mare this early.
The deck's called Tempo Rogue for a reason. It's because you utilize tempo tools early on in the game, and none of these cards are doing that. They're all sort of those support cards.
And that's the thing, Cobalt Scalebane's included in this deck because these players anticipated having to ban Warlock so much that they wanted the extra strength against a deck like Highlander Priest. How much does it cost them when they don't get that going? SamuelTsao not attacking with his dagger last turn means that the captain is now protected behind a Saronite Chain Gang. That trade would have been much better for SamuelTsao had he preemptively attacked with that dagger. He's pretty lined up to use a Cobalt Scalebane in this spot. I mean, maybe the Shadow Step to try to buy time. But look at how much worse that is when that captain lives at 1 health.
Yeah, and because of SamuelTsao's slow start, Tom has not been forced to use any of these tools, which means he's going to be able to, as we talked about earlier, make a lot of stuff in 1 turn, which is what Rogues struggle with. He's got Corridor Creeper now for free. That's just going to be more fodder to combo with Edwin Van Cleef.
And it's desperate when players use Shadow Step on a Saronite Chain Gang.
How long can it go on?
I don't know. I apologize for the feed in this instance. We'll try to get this resolved as quickly as we can. Just like that. You're welcome. And this is Edwin Van Cleef territory.
Yep.
Tom is pulling way ahead.
Yep.
SamuelTsao, I think, needs to draw exactly Vilespine Slayer, or he is going to die quickly.
And even then, he's got 2 big threats on the board that he needs to deal with. Bone Mare still stranded. Lich King still a few turns away.
Oh.
Shadow Step does absolutely nothing in this scenario. The only thing it does is maybe he can Shadow Step the Firefly to make sure that he has a Bone Mare target next turn, but then he'd be doing nothing else, and he would be thoroughly dead.
I think SamuelTsao knows that the end is near. This was a huge turn from Tom.
And he will have that guaranteed target for Bone Mare next turn, but
that's too much.
It just seems like too little too late.
Board clear. Take 15, go. Tom knocking at the door of the top 4 the 2017 World Championships. His first World Championships was an early exit. He went 0-2 in that tournament. And since then, Tom has never given up. He's had a wealth of performances across that career.
Well played.
And add another one to that, because Tom is moving on to the top 4 with a 3-1 victory over SamuelTsao.
And gave the stat earlier, there hasn't been a world champion that didn't lose once in the group stage. And so far, the players that have had success are the ones falling first in the quarterfinals, as Tom becomes our 2nd semifinalist.
Both players at 2-1 have advanced through, and there you can see the camaraderie and the friendship that's developed over the last year. A lot of respect for each other.
Yeah. practice partners, Tom sort of acting as a mentor, but SamuelTsao, Tom admitted, taught him a lot about how to play those faster decks. And there you can see our first semifinal is set. It will be Jason Joe versus Tom60229, two players that have been to the World Championship before, so I'm looking forward to that one. But for now, let's go ahead and hear from Tom and Tom on the stage.
Thank you very much. I'm Tom, joined by Tom. Talk to me about what your feelings are now that you've qualified for the top 4 of the World Championship.
现在打进了那个总决赛的4强，现在心情如何呢？
好想拿冠军。
I want to win it all.
Oh, all right. He definitely wants to keep moving on, of course. But you know, the thing I want to talk about and highlight is the fact that you and SamuelTsao practice with each other. You're both from Taiwan, and you both kind of consider each other as part of your group that came here to the World Championship. So I want to ask, what were you guys talking about before the match, going into the quarterfinals?
大家都是老乡，他是同胞，然后一起从那个台湾到这里打比赛，一路上是都互相扶持。然后那个赛前有跟互相有说些什么吗？
比较有趣的是，他没有特别准备对橘子的牌组，然后就是因为我们已经练习过了，所以就是他直接当做我会晋级来准备的。
So one thing that's worth noting is that when he practiced for the tournament, he didn't practice Orange's lineup. So he just presumed that Tom's going to win against as Orange. So and they practice against each other, so it's all good.
Gotcha, gotcha. Well, the last question I want to ask is, you said that you were looking forward to coming to Amsterdam. How have you been enjoying not only the crowd but also the local city?
然后是来到阿姆斯特丹大总决赛，除了这里有很多那个观众以外，对阿姆斯特丹这个城市有没有比较喜欢的地方？
我们来的前2天有在阿姆斯特丹晃一下，可是小曹未成年，所以没办法进赌场。
So the first 2 days when we arrived here, so we did some sightseeing, but SamuelTsao was still underage, so he can go to the casinos.
Yeah, I picked a bad year for SamuelTsao to qualify because he's underage, but Tom being the responsible adult, and he's going to the semifinals. Please give a round of applause for Tom60229.